As someone who's carried concealed for over a decade across state lines, I've learned the hard way that what feels like a right in one state can turn into a felony in the next. That's why Trump's renewed push for H.R. 38 sounds good on paper, but if we don't fix the fine print, it could blow up in the face of every law-abiding gun owner out there. Let me explain why. But before I start, I would really appreciate it if you would push those buttons below, the subscribe button, the notification bell, all of them. This is not necessary, but those little clicks help a brother out. Plus, it pushes me to give you more valuable car-related content on your screen. Now, buckle up, and let's get back to the video. Back when I started traveling for matches and training courses, I learned real quick how fast your concealed carry permit can turn into dead weight once you cross into a state like New York or California. 1 minute you're legal, next minute you're glancing around at rest stops, wondering if your spare mag or even just having your EDC in the glove box is going to get you jammed up. That's why when Trump brought H.R. 38 back into the spotlight, it didn't feel like just another headline. It felt like something that could actually fix a problem I deal with every time I leave my zip code. H.R. 38, officially called the Constitutional Concealed Carry Reciprocity Act, would make your home state concealed carry license valid in every other state that allows concealed carry. It's not constitutional carry coast to coast. But if your state issued you a permit, this bill would make sure you don't become a felon just because you crossed a state line. It lays it out clearly. You've got to carry a valid government-issued photo ID and a valid permit, and you can legally carry a concealed handgun in any other state that also allows it. On paper, that's huge. It would cover millions of law-abiding carriers like me who've taken the classes, passed the checks, and carry every day. No more double-checking weird state-by-state reciprocity maps. No more leaving your gear behind when crossing into a state with stricter rules. The NRA's been all in on it. Gun owners of America, too. Even the House racked up 200-plus co-sponsors. It's got muscle behind it. But here's the catch. The bill says you still have to follow the laws of the state you're in. That means magazine limits, ammo types, no-go zones, they still apply. So while the permit might travel with you, the fine print can still trip you up. And that's the issue. Because once you read past the bold promises, there's some real risk baked into this thing. Let's get into that. Let me be clear. On paper, H.R. 38 looks like a win. It promises to take the weight off gun owners who've had to navigate a ridiculous maze of carry laws every time they cross a state line. And yeah, it's a step toward recognizing that the Second Amendment doesn't end at your driveway. But once you dig into the fine print, especially if you've been carrying long enough to know how fast a right can become a risk, you start seeing the cracks. And that's exactly what the folks over at Firearms Policy Coalition did. They didn't just skim the surface. They dissected the bill line by line, and what they found should concern every single person who carries legally today. Because if H.R. 38 passes the way it's written, it won't just fail to help us. It could set legal traps that do more harm than good. Let's start with what they call the wallet trap. H.R. 38 requires you to carry both your government-issued photo ID and your concealed carry permit, no exceptions. Say you leave your wallet in the truck or your permit slips behind the nightstand, and you're pulled over. Even if you're 100% legal back home, that mistake could land you a felony in places like New Jersey or New York, where anti-gun prosecutors don't care about intent. Next up is how states can still carve out gun-free zones almost anywhere. H.R. 38 doesn't override how states define quote-unquote sensitive places, which means they can stretch that term to cover sidewalks, transit stations, even public parks. If you're not local, you won't know until it's too late. And it doesn't take a no-gun sign to trigger charges. Some places don't even have to warn you. The bill also limits what you're allowed to carry. It only protects one handgun and its ammunition. If you're like me and carry a spare mag, a small backup piece like an LCP, or even a tourniquet with metal parts, technically you're not covered. In a restrictive state, that's enough to rack up extra charges. Then there's the Gun-Free School Zones Act. H.R. 38 doesn't touch it. So unless your permit was issued by the state you're standing in, being within 1,000 feet of a school while armed is a federal crime. No warning signs, no intent needed. Just existing in the wrong place can ruin your life. This bill needs work, not opposition. Fixes. And I'll get into what those look like next. So let's say H.R. 38 gets the votes. clears the Senate, and hits the president's desk. Signed into law, no amendments, no fixes. A lot of folks will celebrate. Headlines will run with, "National reciprocity is here," and gun owners across the country might breathe a little easier. But here's the problem. If it passes unchanged, the legal landmines don't go away. They get federal protection. And that makes the fallout even worse. First, expect an immediate legal storm. Anti-gun states like California, New York, New Jersey, and Hawaii won't just roll over. They'll challenge the law in federal court before the ink is dry. Attorneys general from those states have already made their positions known in past sessions. They view this as a federal overreach into state-level licensing authority. Lawsuits are coming, and they'll be filed in jurisdictions known for judicial hostility toward gun rights. And if history teaches us anything, vague or poorly worded pro-gun laws don't survive long in court. Look back at the Firearm Owners Protection Act of 1986. It was supposed to shield lawful gun owners traveling across state lines, but loopholes in the text and lack of preemption left it toothless in practice. Courts and prosecutors found ways around it. Drivers with unloaded guns locked in trunks still got arrested, and that was a law passed nearly 40 years ago. Imagine what today's legal climate will do to something as fragile as an unrefined H.R. 38. Then there's the risk to carriers themselves. If the language remains vague or self-contradictory, law enforcement officers in restrictive states could enforce the strictest interpretation of the bill. You may think you're covered, but a single mag in the wrong configuration or an ID left in your other jacket could be treated as a criminal offense. A law that was meant to protect you becomes the tool that traps you. Finally, a failed rollout would damage momentum for national reciprocity. If H.R. 38 gets passed and immediately tied up in lawsuits or abused in enforcement, it won't just fail, it'll set back the entire cause. The narrative becomes, see, national reciprocity doesn't work. That's why getting this bill right isn't optional. It's the difference between a shield and a setup. So, what can be done to fix it before that happens? Let's talk about that next. First, allow for any valid ID, physical or digital. Right now, the bill only recognizes physical, government-issued photo ID carried alongside your permit. That might sound fine until you realize that digital driver's licenses are becoming more common in states like Arizona, Colorado, and Maryland. If a law enforcement officer refuses to accept a digital license and your physical ID isn't on hand, even if you're legally permitted, you could still face serious charges. Updating the language to accept any valid form of identification, digital or physical, is a simple fix that brings the law up to date with modern reality. Second, the bill should explicitly protect more than just one firearm and one magazine. Everyday carry setups vary. Some people carry a primary and a backup. Many of us carry 2 or more mags. That's not paranoia, it's preparation. But the current wording of H.R. 38 only shields a single handgun and its ammunition. FPC wants the bill amended to protect lawful possession of multiple handguns and spare magazines. That's consistent with how real gun owners train and carry. Third, it's time to tighten the rules around gun-free zones. Under the current language, states can still declare nearly any public space a sensitive place with little effort. FPC's proposal is to require clearly marked, physically secured gun-free zones. That means locked doors, access control, visible signage, something more than a sticker on a light pole. If a zone is going to be off-limits, it should be unmistakable. Lastly, the bill needs to address the Gun-Free School Zones Act. Right now, if you don't have a permit issued by the state you're standing in, simply being within 1,000 feet of a school with a firearm is a federal crime. FPC recommends either repealing that section of federal law entirely or carving out an exemption for lawful carriers traveling under H.R. 38. These fixes don't weaken the bill. They make it enforceable, defendable, and far more useful for the people it's meant to protect. But not everyone sees it that way, and that leads to the final piece of the conversation. So let's clear this up. What FPC is proposing isn't compromise in the way most of us dread. This isn't giving ground. It's reinforcing it. These fixes don't trade away rights. They lock them in place so hostile courts and aggressive prosecutors can't tear them apart. Because once H.R. 38 becomes law, it's no longer theory. Every word of that bill will be tested by judges, by state troopers, by attorneys general in places like New York and California. And if the language is soft or vague, it won't just be interpreted loosely. It'll be weaponized. Gun owners have seen this play out before. The Firearm Owners Protection Act of 1986 was supposed to protect lawful transport across state lines. But because Congress didn't spell it out clearly enough, states like New Jersey ignored it, and travelers were arrested anyway. Courts upheld those arrests. That's not a failure of intent. That's a failure of drafting. FPC's amendments don't water the bill down. They make it bulletproof. They make sure that carrying your firearm legally doesn't end in a courtroom because of a paperwork technicality or a gray area restriction. If this bill's going to carry the Second Amendment across state lines, it has to be built to survive the trip.